Imagine if you could have a deep-seated, self-contained happiness that did not depend on the people around you and what they were doing or not doing, that did not depend on what you could afford to buy or what you can't afford to buy. Imagine if you could have a deep-seated, blissful, happy life, regardless of the political situation, who was in the White House or Roundhouse. If you could have a happiness regardless of what the economic situation looked like. Imagine if you could just live life with a deep-seated sense of happiness. Well, the truth is, this is God's plan for you. You might have been taught, or maybe you grew up with this thinking, that you don't strive for happiness because it depends on what's happening around you. And as a Jesus follower, you need something better, and what you need is joy. And there's some truth to being a person who strives for joy. But the problem with saying, no, don't look for happiness, is it's the greatest sermon ever preached by Jesus. Because in this sermon, he begins this sermon by giving us several statements that are how-to statements, how to be happy. Now, our English Bibles translate the word, use the word blessed, but Jesus used the word makarios. And makarios means blissfully happy or self-contained happiness. And he starts the Sermon on the Mount with several of these statements that say, here's how to have a self-contained happiness that doesn't depend on anyone or anything, but something that you can control. And in verse 4, Jesus makes the statement that seems very, very counterintuitive, but if you give it a little thought, it begins to make sense. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, Jesus said, Makarios, or blissfully happy, are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Now, this seems to be totally opposite of what Jesus is talking about. If he's talking about being blissfully happy, why would the second thing you say be, blessed are those who are sad? Happy are those who are sad. Well, mourning is different than just being sad. A mourner is someone who has embraced the truth that death is just part of life. And we live in a culture, and certainly most cultures are like this. We fear death. We're scared to death of death. We spend billions and billions of dollars trying to fight off death. We are trying to cure death. We as a culture, we as human beings have a deep-seated fear of death. But Jesus is saying, happiest are those who see death as a natural part of life. Happiest are those who see death as the next step in life. Happiest are those who have made peace with God so they don't have to fear death. A mourner is just someone who understands that being afraid of death robs you of happiness in life. That's a powerful statement, that being afraid of death robs you of happiness in life. It truly does. I can give you countless examples of people who have been so afraid of dying and so afraid of death that it just sucked all the joy and happiness out of their life. And we don't have to be like that because we follow a Savior who has defeated death. And so when our bodies die, it is just the next step in our life. So today, if you would like to be blissfully happy, self-contained happy, not dependent upon anything or anything you see on the news, well, it could start by just embracing the fact that you follow a God who has defeated death forever, and so will you if you are his child. And so you have nothing to fear from death. And the more you fear death, the more it will rob you of happiness in this life. Jesus wants us to be happy. One of the ways to be happy is to embrace the fact death is part of life, and death is nothing to be feared. Blissfully happy are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. See ya.